Teeny Gamer here, and, well, Venti is out right now on Genshin Impact. So, might as well make a showcase video on him since I do own him, as you saw right there. So, well, people might be wondering if Venti's even worth pulling or not. He's a day one character after all. So people might think he's outdated, or people might think he's not as good as he was on day one. Well, it's time to showcase what he is really capable of. So I'm just going to be doing the showcase, and then you guys make your thoughts and opinions on whether you want to pull for Venti or not pull for Venti. But in my opinion, you should save for Farina. But regardless, I'm going to be showcasing Venti anyway, and you guys make your judgment as to whether he is good or not. So, without any further ado, let's get this showcase started, and let's go over my Venti build. Alright, so here is my Venti build. So, the reason why I do showcase these stats and weapons and talents and all the other stuff first is to give you an idea on how Venti should be built, or how a Venti should be leveled up, and so on and so forth. Yeah, you probably guys get the idea. So, anyways, here is my Venti build. So, as you can see here, his EM is not that high. That's because his weapon already gives him EM. So, yeah, I don't really need to give him that much EM. But if you do want to increase his damage, then you should give him more EM. But in my case, I did not give him a lot. His energy recharge is pretty high as well. Yes, that means that he could spam his Q a lot just by tapping his E, and he gets his burst back, which is really, really good, because Venti's burst is probably one of the strongest bursts in the entire game, just because of the crowd control that it brings. Also, his crit rate, crit damage is also pretty average too. This is literally average 1-2 ratio crit rate, crit damage. So yeah. Venti, again, he's, you should build him as a support or a sub DPS, but I built him as a sub DPS just because I want him to do a little bit more damage. But if you do want him as a support, he is great for that too. But as for my Venti, sub DPS. As for his weapon, I gave him Elegy for the End, which is his signature weapon, which works on every single support in the entire game. I am not joking. So, yeah, Elegy for the End is an extremely, extremely, extremely good weapon for Venti. It basically gives him EM when he uses his skill or burst. It basically creates a sigil, and then once you get a lot of stacks in, you get 100 elemental mastery, and you get an attack increase by 20% on R1, which is pretty nice. Yeah, this weapon is pretty good on basically anyone who uses a sub DPS or a support build. But Venti, this is Venti's signature weapon. It's literally in the weapon wishes. So yeah, I just gave him LG for the End for lore purposes, and because it's really good for him, and I use him. So yeah. As for artifact set, 4-piece Viridescent Venerer, which is his best set. There's no other set you would ever run on Venti. This is literally the #1 set you would run, unless you want to run Emblem of Severed Fate. But Emblem of Severed Fate is for sub DPS Venti, and it's kind of niche. But Viridescent Venerer is literally meant for Venti, because not only does it increase his animal damage, it also increases his swirl damage, and also decreases the opponent's elemental res by 40% of the element that is infused on the swirl. So yeah, literally his best set. Literally every single animal character in the entire game runs this set, besides Zhao and other animal DPSs. But for animal supports and sub DPSs, this is definitely the go-to set to go to, because of the elemental res decrease, which is pretty good. As for constellations, I have him at C0. He doesn't really have that great constellation, so why would you even bother giving him constellations? I mean, this just gives him a extra arrow on a charge shot, and this decreases animal res and physical res by 10%. And also, when you get, or when opponents get launched upwards, they also get animal res and physical res decrease. But on bosses, you only just get the 12%. On other enemies, you could get the other 12% as well. So I guess you can get him to C2, but then again, he works really well as a crowd controller anyway. So yeah, just make him a crowd controller. You don't really need the C2. Unless you really, really, really want to increase the damage that he deals. And also you want to increase the damage that your other animal characters deal or your physical attackers deal, then you should get this constellation. But if you don't run a animal DPS with Venti and you just run him as a support, this is not a worthwhile constellation to get. And as for talents, I have him at 666. He is basically minimally built. Yeah, level 6 talent is basically the stopping point. Because when you level up to level 7, you use gold talents instead of silver talents. So yeah, 6 is basically the middle ground. That's why I say he is minimally built, because 666 is the minimum level that you should get your skills at. So yeah, this is a minimally built Venti, as you see here, a minimally built sub-DPS Venti. So yeah, that is what we're going to be going forward with this Venti build. So, well, without any further ado, let's just showcase him on his best teams. I am going to be limiting him to 3 teams because he is used a lot in a lot of teams in Spiral Abyss. You can literally run him on anything and he performs well. So yeah, well, I'm going to be limiting him to 3 teams, his most commonly used teams, by the way. So yeah, let's just get to Spiral Abyss and showcase him. Alright, so here we are in Spiral Abyss. I am not going to be doing floor 12 because there is an enemy on floor 12 that literally does not fit Venti at all, which is the Seahorse. Yeah, Venti's main purpose is to crowd control, so we have to go through floors that basically give him crowd control. So the only logical solution is chamber 1 of floor 11. So yeah, we're going to be showcasing him on, well, the chamber with the most enemies, which is the Eremites here. There are probably around like 15 or 12 of them. So yeah, this is a perfect chamber to showcase Venti. Also, keep in mind that we are going to be using a team here that basically gives Cryo damage bonus, so keep that in mind, and also Hydro damage bonus. Because Venti's best team in the entire game right now is the Ayaka Freeze team. Yes, the Ayaka Freeze team. Or the Venti Freeze team, which is what I call it, because, well, we're showcasing Venti, right? So yeah, I'm pretty sure in the video, I'm probably going to decide this is going to be the Venti Freeze team. But yeah, but keep in mind that we do have a leyline disorder where we have 60% cryo damage bonus and then 60% hydro damage bonus. So you could probably do the math and then lower these values down to get the true value of these attacks. So without any further ado, we're just going to be putting a random character. Let's put Klee. And then we're going to be showcasing Venti. So here we go. So the Venti Freeze team, what it basically does, well, we're going to be choosing this since it doesn't affect Venti. So yeah. So, what does it do? Well, you can literally freeze. All you have to do is do 1 freeze, and then kablam, everyone is frozen. So yeah, this team is pretty good since you basically crowd control, and also since they're frozen, they can't move, which is pretty nice. It means that you can gather them all in one place and they still won't move, which is pretty cool. Yeah, as you can see there, it's pretty nice and accessible. Let's do Ayaka Elemental Skill. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, as you can see there, it's easy freeze. You can basically affect the element with Cryo or Hydro, and then you could just use Venti Elemental Burst and then gather them up, as you can see there. Yeah, so he basically is a crowd controller. That is Venti's gameplay. And also, as you saw there, his elemental skill props up the enemies, basically any enemy that could basically get launched, which is pretty nice. It means that you could basically stall them and they don't attack you, and you could attack them back, which is pretty nice. So yeah, that is Venti gameplay, and that is the Venti Freeze team. As you saw there, you can freeze enemies up, gather them around, and they're still frozen, meaning that you can get easy applications on frozen with Venti's Burst, since Venti's Burst will probably be infused with Cryo, or Hydro, which is pretty nice. So yeah, that is Venti's most used team, which is the Freeze team. And now we're going to be going on to his next team. So I usually go to the Abyss and then just showcase the characters from there. But this is a special case for the second most used team Venti is on, and that is the Rainbow team. So if you don't know what the Rainbow team does, it basically means that you can basically put whatever you want on the team, basically a mix of 4 elements. And that is a Rainbow team. So with this Rainbow team in mind, I'm going to be putting a really wonky, weird Rainbow team. So we're going to be putting Raiden. We're going to be putting Venti, obviously, but I need to choose another character. So Raiden. We're going to be putting, let's see, I guess we could put, yeah, I guess we could put Kokomi? Yeah, Kokomi. Actually, no, let's put Xingqiu. So Raiden, Xingqiu, Venti, and then Bennett. Yeah, let's just do that. So yeah, this is a Rainbow team. So basically a mix of 4 elements. It could be whoever you want it to be, but he works really well on a Rainbow team because he can infuse a lot of elements on his burst, which is pretty nice. It means that you can have a lot of elemental reactions on a Rainbow team. But the only problem is that you get no elemental resonance. Yeah, you only get this. So, which means that you can tank more. But it's still pretty good regardless because of the elemental reactions. So yeah. Well, let's just hop in and showcase this team. But yeah, in a Rainbow team, you can put whatever you want. But for this, for purposes like this, I'm just going to be using this. Let's just do, yeah, healing. Alright, so let's just use Raiden's E. And then have the swirl be infused by Electro. And we can just do that. And then we can get some Electro Charge reactions, as you can see there. So yeah, it's free reactions. It's just reactions to team. So yeah, let's use Venti's Burst again. This is going to be affected by Electro. And then we could just use, yeah, as you can see there, there's a lot of reactions going on the screen. So yeah, that is basically a Rainbow team. A lot of elemental reactions all at once, which is pretty nice. Well, anyways, now it's time to showcase his last team, and it is a Wild Ball team. Since those 2 teams are his most used teams. He doesn't really have a 3rd used team, but, well, it's time to showcase a Wild Ball team anyway. So, well, let's just cut to the 3rd team. So, here is the Wild Ball team I'm going to be using. Yes, you probably already recognize it here. It is the Archon team. So yeah, this is the last chance I get to use the Archon team because Farina's going to be coming out on the next version. So yeah, well, this is probably going to be your last chance to see a full Archon team before one more Archon is added to the roster. So let's just do this. So basically the same concept here. You just do elemental reaction right there. You use Venti Burst. We can tag everyone with Nahida very easily. And then Zhongli's just here for the shield. That's basically it. But yeah, as you can see there, Venti is extremely good at crowd controls. That's basically all there is to it. Great crowd controller. Does pretty good damage if you make him a sub DPS and give him a lot of elemental mastery stacks. But yeah, Quicken is an extremely good reaction right there, as you see there. Nahida Raiden is an extremely powerful combo. So yeah, there we go. There is Venti's showcase on Spiral Abyss. So now it's time to actually fight bosses. So yeah, well, without any further ado, let's just cut to the first boss we're going to be fighting. So since Venti is the Anemo Archon and also is tied to Mondstadt, we're going to be fighting Mondstadt bosses with Venti. So yeah, so we're just going to be fighting Dvalin, and then we're going to be fighting Andrius, the wolf. So without any further ado, let's just get on with it. So here we go. Alright, so the team, as you probably already saw here, is the Venti Freeze team. Except that we're going to be replacing Ayaka with Ganyu so that we could shred his HP bar. So, Venti's burst probably might not hit Dvalin just because of how weirdly the boss is. So yeah, you're probably not even going to see Venti even do animal damage here, so we're probably just going to be using his elemental skill and be done with it. But yeah, well, without any further ado, let's just go. I am going to be trying to at least land the burst on him. If not, then, well, it sucks because the boss is, well, it's part of his mechanics, so yeah. Anyways, that is the HP bar shredded. Alright, he's affected by Cryo right now, so we can use his burst right here. That should hit him. Yeah, there we go. And now it's affected by Cryo. So now we can just do this. We can do Venti elemental skill. And then we can probably just do charge attacks with Ganyu. There we go. Yeah, so at least I landed Venti's burst as you saw there. He works kind of well against the Dvalin, but not really. I mean, you do use him as a trial character in the fight anyway. But Venti, I don't know, not really good against the Dvalin. But I still showcased him regardless on the boss, and he still performed his job. He kind of shredded through half of his HP bar. And also, he provided Cryo application on his Anemo attack, meaning that Ganyu was able to do 50k per hit, as you saw there, with her charge attacks, with the help of Shenhua's elemental skill. So yeah, Venti did his job, which is pretty nice. So, let's cut to the second Mondstadt boss, which is Andrius the Wolf. Alright, so here we are with Andrius. So yes, I did run a rainbow team with this. So we have Raiden, Nahida, Venti, of course, and Saganomiya Kokomi for the healing. So we're going to be abusing the quicken reaction since it is pretty good. And also, if we do get some cores because of Kokomi, we could use Hyper Bloom, which is pretty nice. So yeah. The reason why I didn't use a freeze team on this boss is because he's immune to Cryo. So there's no reason for me to ever use a freeze team here. Alright, I think that's half of his health gone. Yep, there we go. We do have Venti's burst on standby, which is pretty nice. We can just affect him by Electro and then use his burst, and then we're gonna see how much he can basically support the team. With the 4-piece Viridescent, as well as the LG for the end passive. Yeah, we're gonna be doing the full showcase here. So, he's probably gonna do his jump attack. Yeah, there we go. Let's affect him by Cryo real quick. Or Electro. Alright, second phase time. Here we go. Use Nahida. Let's use that. There we go. He's immune, but we could still do electro reactions on his burst. So yeah. There we go. And that should be it. Yep. That was kind of easy. So yeah, even though Venti is well, Venti can't do damage to Andrius since he's immune to Cryo and Anemo, he still got the job done because of his elemental reaction on Raiden's E, which basically allowed his burst to become Electro, which is pretty cool. Yeah, so Venti, obviously pretty good, as you saw there. Still good to this very day as a day 1 character, but yeah. Well, anyways, it is time to actually showcase his damage output, which is probably not going to be much, but I am going to be going to the Cryo Regisvine, yes, the Cryo Regisvine, to showcase Venti's damage. So, let's just cut to that. So here we are in the Cryo Regisvine place. So, this is the team I'm going to be running for Venti's max damage showcase. So here it is. I am going to be going for the LG of the End passive, which means that I'm going to be using elemental skills and burst to get the 12 seconds of damage boost. But yeah, well, anyways, let's just go over the team right now. So first off, we have the DPS of the team, which is Venti right here. So we're going to be triggering, of course, his artifact, Viridescent Venurer, which is just going to be decreasing the elemental res of the element that is infused. We also have his weapon, Elegy for the End. We're going to be going for his passive, where we have to get 4 sigils to get a 100 elemental mastery and an attack of 20%. So yeah, And we're going to be using his burst since that is his most damaging skill in the game. We're probably going to be using his elemental skill as well to see how much damage that does as well. So yeah. Next up on the team we got Zhongli, who is here for his shield since it protects us. But we're not going to be using it for the protection purposes. We're going to be using it because he has Tenacity of the Millilith, which basically increases the damage of nearby party members by 20%. So yeah, that is going to be why he is here on the team. It's because of his shield. Next up, we have Madame Faruzan right here, who is going to be using her Elemental Burst to decrease the animal res of other opponents. So yeah, we're going to be decreasing the animal res of the Cryo Regisvine, which will basically just give Venti more damage. So yeah, that is what Faruzan is here for. And last but not least, we have our boy Bennett, who is going to be providing us with the Pyro Reaction and his Elemental Burst, which basically increases our attack based off his base attack. So yeah, which means that we're just going to be doing more damage. So yeah. And here is the weapon here that is going to be helping us with the burst, which is a base attack of 608. So yeah, so there it is. The game plan is pretty simple. We're just going to be using Benny E. That'll probably give us the Venti stacks we need. So yeah, we're just going to be popping everything all at once. And let's just get this started. So yeah, well, anyways, let's go. So, skill right here, that'll probably give us a first stack of Venti. There's the second stack. And then third stack. There we go. Burst. There we go. And then now we stand back. And then use a elemental skill right here. And that is the damage he dealt. Right there. So yeah, it doesn't look that much. But again, imagine it with multiple opponents on the screen. And you could probably already guess how much damage he could possibly do. So yeah, there is the Venti boss or DPS showcase as you saw there. We're going to be setting it up again because why not? So let's just use his skills and bursts. We're going to be getting a lot of Anemo thingies right here. Yep, so there we go. Let's use Faruzan. Venti burst right here. Using a... there we go. Yeah. So, yeah. Venti didn't do that much, but that's because he is minimally built. Remember that. He is a minimally built character. He's just there for the crowd control purposes of, well, Spiral Abyss, as well as other bosses or chambers that basically have multiple enemies. So yeah, just think about the damage there, but think about it with multiple enemies and crowd control, and you can probably see where Venti's damage lies. But yeah, as you saw there, 5k per burst hit, which is not bad for a minimally built Venti. So yeah, well, that is Venti's max damage. So now it is time to go over the overview of his kit and then give my final thoughts on him. So let's just cut to that. So here is Venti the Bard, aka Barbados, aka the Anemo Archon. So yeah, well, let's just go over his talents and constellations and give my final thoughts on Venti. So let's just get this started. So his normal attack, Divine Marksmanship, performs up to 6 consecutive shots with a bow, which is his normal attack. It just means that he could just do 6 normal attacks. Pretty self-explanatory. Charge Attack performs a more precise aim shot with increased damage. While aiming, favorable winds will accumulate on the arrowhead. A fully charged wind arrow will deal animal damage. So basically, when you use your charge attack, you deal animal damage, which is basically every other bow character in the entire game. Yeah. And Plunging Attack fires off a shower of arrows in mid-air before falling and striking the ground, dealing AoE damage upon impact. Basically your basic plunging attack on every bow character. Yep. His passive talent or combat talent, Skyward Sonnet. O wind upon which all hymns and songs fly, bear these earthwalkers up into the sky. So yeah, this is basically a poem that Venti says, and also it is the flavor text for this elemental skill. Well, let's just go over his elemental skill and what it does. So, his press summons a wind domain at the opponent's location, dealing AoE animal damage and launching opponents into the air. So basically, when you press his E, you basically launch the opponent in the air, dealing AoE animal damage. It also affects multiple people as well within the AoE, which is pretty nice. It means that you could just deal a lot of damage to them. His hold summons an even larger wind domain with Venti as the epicenter, dealing AoE animal damage and launching affected opponents into the air. After unleashing the hold version of this ability, Venti rides the wind into the air. Opponents hit by Skyward Sonnet will fall to the ground slowly. So yeah, his hold basically summons a larger AoE around him, basically dealing AoE damage. So it's basically the press, but it does more damage and it affects a larger AoE around him, which is basically it. Yeah, that is Skyward Sonnet. Here is his burst, which is Wind's Grand Ode. Fires off an arrow made of countless Colslid winds, creating a huge storm eye that sucks in opponents and deals continuous animal damage. So yeah, that is basically what his burst does. It just deals a lot of animal damage and also sucks people in, which is pretty cool. It is his bread and butter, literally his best thing in his kit. And here is the elemental absorption. If the storm eye comes into contact with hydro, pyro, cryo, or electro, it will deal additional elemental damage of that type. Elemental absorption may only occur once per use. So yeah, once the burst gets inflicted by these elemental reactions, you basically have to stick with that elemental absorption reaction until the burst ends. So yeah, make sure to affect the opponent with the correct element that you want to have your 4-piece Viridescent set to proc, or the burst to proc, and then basically just deal your damage there. So yeah, that is basically it. His burst is a crowd controller that can basically have elemental absorption, which basically you get to deal a lot of damage, which is pretty cool. Venti is a great crowd controller. His passive talent, Embrace of Winds. Holding Skyward Sonnet creates an upcurrent that lasts for 20 seconds. So basically, when you use his elemental skill, you basically get to float and become Zhao. So yeah, you could spam plunge attacks. But this is kind of useless, since you won't be using plunge attacks for most of these characters unless you're using like some niche plunging team like Hu Tao or like Raiden Shogun. But yeah, Embrace of Winds is kind of a niche thing, but it's great for exploration purposes. So yeah, as for exploration talent, this is an extremely good talent. Like, no joke. And lastly, for his passive talent, we got Storm Eye, which basically generates 15 energy for Venti after the effects of Wind's Grand Ode end. If an elemental absorption occurred, this also restores 15 energy to all characters of that corresponding element in party. This means that you basically get your burst back instantly because of the 15 energy, or close to instantly, because that is a lot of energy to take. So yeah, once your burst ends, you basically get a lot of energy, and also if it is affected by elemental absorption, you basically get more energy back with a grand total of 30 energy that you can restore to yourself. This means that Venti can basically get his burst back a lot. Yeah, it's really good. So he gets 30 energy back, while other characters, if they do elemental absorption, get 15 energy back as well. So yeah, so Venti gets 30, your other teammates get 15, which is still pretty nice. And his final overworld talent, which is Wind Rider, decreases gliding stamina consumption for your own party members by 20%. That's stackable with passive talents that provide the exact same effects. This just means that you could basically glide for longer without decreasing your stamina rapidly. So yeah, this is pretty good for exploration purposes. Again, you're going to be gliding a lot in Genshin anyway, so this is a pretty nice talent to have. Literally, it's what Amber has. So yeah, not only you get Embrace of Winds for exploration, you also get Wind Rider. This is a pretty nice package for Venti, which is pretty cool. And now it's time to go over his constellations. So he has kind of mediocre constellations in general, but they still have kind of a use for them, and you'll probably see what I mean. So let's just go over them right now. So C1 fires 2 additional arrows per aim shot, dealing 33% of the original arrow's damage. So this basically just gives him more animal damage on his charge shot, which means that you could probably make him a DPS with this constellation. But then again, he's here for support, and he is meant to be played as a support. So this constellation is kind of useless. This is literally Amber C1, which basically gives her an additional arrow to fire off for her aimed shot, which is, well, I guess. I mean, it works for Amber since she is meant to be played as a sub DPS, but for Venti, he is a support. So yeah. His C2, I already went over this, but it's time to go over it again because it is the overview, which Breeze of Remnants. So, Skyward Sonnet decreases opponent's animal res and physical res by 12% for 10 seconds. Opponents launched by Skyward Sonnet suffer an additional 12% animal res and a physical res decrease while airborne. So when you use his E, you basically decrease the animal res and physical res of opponents. And also, opponents launched by the Skyward Sonnet will also get an additional 12% animal res and physical res decrease, which is pretty nice. So this means that you can basically deal more animal damage on your burst, or have any other animal DPS deal more damage as well. This also works for physical damage dealers like Eula because of the physical res right here on his constellation too. So yeah, it's not bad. It's not a bad constellation, but it's restricted to animal and physical damage dealers, not other elements. So yeah, this is kind of a niche thing as well. As for his C3, Ode 2000 Winds. Increase the level of Winds grant Ode by 3. This means that you just get increased levels by 3, meaning that if you do get his passive talent to level 10, or his burst talent to level 10, you basically get 13 level, which is pretty nice. His C4. When Venti picks up an elemental orb or particle, he receives a 25% animal damage bonus for 10 seconds. This is all the time, by the way, so you basically get this permanently. Yeah, 25% animal damage bonus is pretty nice on Venti. Means that he does more damage on his burst and his skill, which is pretty nice. His C5, Concerto dal Cielo. Increases the level of Skyward Sonnet by 3. This basically increases his elemental skill by 3. And if you do have that skill on level 10, you basically get a level 13 elemental skill. Pretty nice. And last but not least, C6, Storm of Defiance, constellation level 6. Targets who take damage from Winds grant Ode have their animal res decreased by 20%. If an elemental absorption occurred, then their res towards the corresponding element is also decreased by 20%. This is literally what makes him a support right here. His C6 just makes him an even better support than before. So, not only you get animal res decreased by 20% when you use his burst, meaning that he does more damage on his burst. When you use an elemental absorption on that burst, they also take another 20% on the element that is corresponded to that burst. So when you use Pyro, or Cryo, Electro, Hydro, you basically get res decrease on those elements, which is pretty nice. It means that your characters will deal more damage while Venti crowd controls them for free, which is pretty cool. And also, I forgot to mention this, but I forgot to say the name of his C1, which is Splitting Gales. So yeah, there we go. There is the confusion out of the way. But yeah, that is Venti's constellations. And now it's time to go to my final thoughts on Venti. So, well, let me sit on the statue real quick. So, what do I think of Venti? He is still pretty pretty good to this very day. Yes, a day 1 character still pretty good is a really, really, really tall order, but actually, he's still pretty good. I mean, there are other day 1 characters that are still really good to this day, like Bennett, Shingcho, Zhongling, Fischl. Yeah, you get the idea. But day 1, Venti was the best character in the game, and as of now, he's still pretty good. He is the best crowd controller in the entire game. Like, no joke, his burst literally rivals no one. And, I mean, Kazuha can crowd control, but you have to use his elemental skill at the right time anyway. And plus, Venti's burst sucks them up really fast. Unlike Kazuha, which basically is on a large AoE, the burst on Venti sucks them up really, really fast. And also, you could spam it all the time. I mean, you could spam Kazuha's elemental skill, but it doesn't crowd control as well as Venti's burst since it lingers, unlike Kazuha's burst, which is a one-time use. So yeah. Also, there are other Anemo crowd controllers out there too that are free to play, like Sucrose. You could use Sucrose in place of Venti if you do want a crowd controller that isn't a 5-star. But Sucrose, you have to play her a bit differently, meaning that you have to position her in certain ways in order to get the full effect on her burst and her elemental skill. So yeah. In the end, Venti is still the best crowd controller in the game. Fight me on this one, you guys, but I will stand my ground and say that Venti is the best crowd controller in the entire game. Yeah, no one can change my opinion otherwise, unless they release another character who could basically compete with Venti as a crowd controller. So yeah. Well, anyways, that is my final thoughts on Venti. Pretty good. As for whether you should pull him or not, it is up to you to decide. But in my opinion, save for Furina. Yeah, save for Furina. It's not worth getting Venti over Furina, because Furina might basically become the best character in the entire game because of, well, it's a Archon. Archons are good when they release, so yeah. Well, anyways, I hope you guys liked the video. I love doing these showcase videos, so if you do leave a like down below, it'll be greatly appreciated. That means that I can do more showcase videos in the future, which basically gives me motivation to make more videos, which is pretty nice. Also, if you do subscribe to the channel, by the way, subscribe if you do enjoy my content. Be sure to leave a, well, notification down below. Just turn on the bell when you do subscribe. Basically notifies you on whether I upload or not. I upload once a week, but the upload schedule is inconsistent. So if you do subscribe and turn on the notification bell, you basically get all my uploads basically fast. So yeah, there's no hurting to subscribe. It is free after all. So yeah, it's free and it supports me. Do it. Subscribe. Also, comment down below. What do you think of Venti? You think he's good? You think he's bad? You think he's the best crowd controller? Do you think he's not? And there's, well, Sucrose and Kazuha are. Let me know in the comments down below. I want to see your guys' opinion on Venti, whether he is good or not, since it is still a debatable topic as to whether he is still good or still not good. But yeah. Well, anyways, thank you guys for watching this showcase video, and I'll see you guys in the next Genshin video.